Yeah, I want to talk about a little bit on oil changes, and I know a lot of people change their oil. It's probably a subject that people know about, but I'm going to tell you a couple things you probably don't know about. But first off, the things you need to take the oil filter off. A lot of times, the damn oil filter's in very inaccessible places. Now, I've used busted so many oil filter wrenches. I got more of them than this, but usually you got these type of things, and what happens is you stick the ratchet in here. And I can use I like this little swivel head ratchet. It's pretty good because you can move it around, or you have a regular ratchet, or you can use the breaker bar. That's another good one with a short extension. But basically this sits and snaps on the end of the oil filter. Now, I kind of like halfway mechanic, to tell you the truth, for many years, so even though this is a simple thing, I actually have a lot more tools than this. But what you have too is you can also have these ones that snap on the top. They could be different sizes. Like this could be for a smaller filter, so this is not for this one. And you'll have the larger size, and that fits on there just perfect. Now a lot of times these slip. I don't like them. This one's a good one for small filters, and you use it in conjunction with a breaker bar, regular ratchet, or swivel head ratchet. Fits right in here. It's 3/8 drive. No big deal, right? Now it's not really what I'm getting onto, but I got to cover this first, because a lot of times people have a problem taking off the damn oil filter. You might see a big screwdriver struck through the side of it, and they pull it off that way because it's stuck on there hard. I found that these things, they usually slip. They don't work that well, because this is, even though it supposedly fits on here tight, and then sometimes they have this coating on here, they don't fit exactly right. The thing I use the most is this. It's from Ampro Professional. It's it's very strong, and you can turn it like this. It's very strong. It's very thick, and you can see how thick it is here. So I wind up using this wrench most of the time. Now, what I want to point out about oil filters, I know they got to tell you the truth, just to give you a quick rundown on brands: Purolator, Wix, Motorcraft, things like Amsoil cells, that type of stuff. Those are the filters to get. I usually stay away from the Frams, the cheapest ones that are orange, but this is an extended guard. This is a good filter. The better end filters are good. But what I want to point out about filters is, many times the car can take a larger filter if you got the room. Like this is on a 350 4-speed El Camino, right? And the filter that it calls for is actually half the size of this. This is twice the size. Basically it's the same price, maybe $1 more. It's well worth it. And I've had this car with the same engine in it since, I don't know, this engine's been in here since the 80s. I got this car in 91. So tell me about longevity. Now, how many cars around that have, there's 1978s that are still around running fine, right? And I use this thing. I'll be probably making a video of it hauling all kinds of concrete 4x4s. This is not something I just, park someplace and never use. I use this thing. So it's been used hard, and it's a lot of it's maintenance. So this is basically a cost savings tip. I'll use the better filters. Now, like I said, you can use a much bigger filter. Now, why did they not do that from the factory? In this case, it's actually called a 350 truck filter. You'd have to look up under truck. It's the same stupid 350 Chevy. Now, for instance, on the motorcycle, the Harley, the Sportster, if I look up a Dynaglide filter, it's much bigger. It fits on there. Also, the Chrysler is another Chrysler I have convertible. It has a Mitsubishi engine in it. It can take a twice as big Jeep filter. So maybe if you look around, you might be able to find an oil filter that has twice the capacity. I'd recommend doing that. How come they don't do that from the factory? The reason is because a lot of times people will look at these bean counting pinheads, and also people that review the cars will say the cost of maintenance is this many dollars and this many pennies, because you're taking an extra half a quart of oil, and also you're putting an extra $1 worth of oil filter in there. But the longevity of the car might go 50 or $100,000. That's 50 or 100,000 miles longer by doing so. So I mean, penny-ass bean counter morons aren't freaking thinking at all. So, I'm halfway into bean counting and accounting, but I realize there's an economy in doing things correctly. Now, in the case of additives, I don't use this much in the engine, but I do sometimes because I went on to something else. Marble Mystery Oil has been around since the 20s. Actually says right on here, since 1923. This is, if you're going to have one additive you use for a lot of stuff for fuel and gas, and also just as an oil to use for various lubricants, like you use this in an air gun. This is an air hammer. You put some right in here, a few drops. That's better than the oil that they sell. This is actually from Campbell Housing. It's a pretty decent gun. It's for home use, but it works good. But to keep it up so the insides don't get rusted up or jammed up or fouled up, little Marble Mystery Oil. The additive I use in the cars all the time, and I've been around messing around with additives for a million years. I know a lot of times there's snake oil. I'd say 90% of them are bullshit. This one's good. And if I'm saying it, believe me, it's good. Auto-RX. The only place you can get this on the web. www.auto-rx.com. And I don't sell for them. They're in, they're in Florida, up here in Jacksonville, I believe. Now, you have to use this with regular Dino oil, not the true synthetic. But you can use it with this type of synthetic. They'll even say you can use it from the Walmart Super Tech synthetic, and you only need a couple ounces. That's what I do. Initially, I'll use the full treatment, and I just put a couple ounces. Or you can just use, in the case, I also want to point out, like if you're using diesel, if you have a diesel engine, you want to use 1540. A lot of times I just use this Walmart Super Tech oil, which is actually a good oil, believe it or not. People want to save some bucks. Make sure you put clean oil in it. Use a really good filter. And actually this Walmart oil is not bad, but I always use a couple ounces of this stuff with it. And cars I have, actually, I have the Suzuki Jeep way over 200,000 miles on it. Doesn't burn a drop of oil even in 3,000 miles. Everything is like, nothing wears out. So these types of tips actually are well worth it. And like I said, they don't put in these bigger filters for a reason, because they're idiots. That's really what it is. These penny pinchers at the factory and all these reviewers talking about maintenance costs, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. This would actually, well, what happens is they can't sell you a new car if you don't wear out the old one. So there you go. Another thing I want to point out is when you drain the oil, let it drain, if you have time, at least several hours, especially overnight. You will notice, very important, that the pan will become much, much cleaner inside. You will think all the oil's out of it, but maybe it'll drip one drop every 15 minutes. Let it do its thing overnight. Just don't start the stupid car up with no oil in it. Let it drip overnight, and guess what? That you'll get out the dirtiest oil that way. And I'll go on to a couple other things a little bit later. Yeah, another thing that they don't do from the factory, a lot of people don't do. I don't know why people don't do this often, because once you buy this part, you never have to buy it again. It's a magnet. It's a very, very strong magnet. I forget what the hell you could call it, neodymium, or not saying the word right. But basically it just sticks on the bottom. You can see how it's on there. Even with this grip tight coating on it, most filters don't have that. It sticks directly to the metal. It won't fall off. Now, if you're an off-road vehicle, if you want to get one of these magnets, they got the wraparound kind. They're more money. This might run about 15-20 bucks. And I have a couple of these, actually have them on the cars. But they have the wraparound kind also to go around here. And if you're afraid that's going to fall off when you're doing some serious off-roading, it doesn't never fall off on a normal car. But I don't know, some people for off-roading, they use the kind of wrap around the filter, so you got to get a little more specific about that. I would recommend this. I don't think this is snake oil at all, because as this filter sits in here like this, it sits like this, you're trapping the particles of oil with the metal shavings in it in the filter itself. So you throw this away. And also when you change the oil, make sure you fill up this filter all the way with oil, so you have initially good oil pressure right away. A lot of people don't do that. That's one reason I would never take my car to a freaking place to have oil changed, because I don't think they actually fill these filters. They're definitely not going to spend 10 minutes or 15 minutes making sure this thing is topped up when they screw it back on. So they start the car up dry. you know. So I don't know how much wear that is. Now, in the case of using this magnet, which is pretty strong, and actually they got even stronger ones. I got another one coming in. You can't use it on this type of filter. This is actually out of the newer Chevys. Well, they're not new, but they're a more later model. They use like this element. You could buy just the element. The design was like this. You're throwing away less pollution because you're just throwing away the element. And they also sell it with this, the cap, the replacement cap. You just need to get the element, but sometimes people break these caps. What you need to get is a special tool. You can use a socket, but it's better having a tool that fits right over the top. And when you unscrew it, it comes out. But in this case, you can't use a filter magnet on this. So what I would recommend is you use the oil plug that's magnetized, that's on the pan. Use that instead. Now, I haven't got one for this car yet, but this car is highly maintained, so it doesn't really matter that much. And just to show where this whole filter is located, it's actually right here. You can see that. I don't know if it's light enough or not, but it's right here. So it's a little bit tight quarters to get out, and this type, I don't know, it's really not that cheap to buy, but the idea is there's less pollution when you throw this away. But you can't use the magnetic thing on the filter. You'd have to use the magnet on the oil pan itself, or the drain plug, one of the two. So that's the way you would pick up the metal shavings from the engine as it wears down or whatever. These type of things are very, very important actually, because a lot of people ignore them. They used to come from the factory that way sometimes. Sometimes you'll still see that in the transmissions. You might see a little, like an automatic transmission, a little magnet. A lot of times they don't do this stuff. This is so super cheap to do. You should do this on a car, because I think a lot of people are going to be keeping on the cars a lot longer. I keep these stupid things forever anyway. I'm sick of buying them. Because I was driving 50,000 miles a year. You buy a brand new car and you put 50,000 miles on it, guess what? You just lost half the value. So I drive old, and I just keep them up. And I think this is really what could benefit people, regular middle class type people. And these are good tips. Make sure you drain the engine oil. If you got time, let it drain several hours or overnight. Let all the oil come out of the bottom of the pan. Make sure you fill up that oil filter all the way when you screw it in, so the thing has initial oil pressure when you start the car up. You put clean oil in the car and all that stuff. And then use the magnets. And also recommend using that Auto RX additive. It's pretty expensive, but you only need a couple ounces each oil change. So if you're getting a bottle of that stuff, it'll last for quite a few oil changes, even though it's fairly expensive stuff. That actually will keep the engine from accumulating sludge. And a lot of times these engines have variable timing and stuff, very sensitive components, and in that case you want to make sure everything is thoroughly clean. It's not just a matter of using synthetic oil. That Auto RX is no BS. It's no snake oil. I've messed around with additives in cars for quite some time. Some of them are good. That one's by far is the best one. I'd recommend that. Only available online. I don't sell it though. I'm just telling you the truth about this.